I fell in love with baseball. It was October 11th, 1978. Long time ago. And the moment I fell in love with baseball was when Bob Welch, in Game 2, ninth inning of the World Series, came in against Reggie Jackson. You got to understand, I hated Reggie Jackson. Was not alone. Everybody hated Reggie. Well, okay, there were two camps. You either loved Reggie Jackson or you hated Reggie Jackson, and this was long before life mellowed me and I understood that Reggie Jackson actually had a really good sense of humor. But at the time, I hated him, and I hated the Yankees. And Bob Welch came in, and in one of the most epic pitcher-batter duels of all time, ended up striking out Reggie Jackson, putting the Dodgers up 2-0 in the World Series, and I was just absolutely certain that, number one, we were going to win, and number two, we were never going to lose again. This is what heaven is. Dodgers winning the World Series year after year after year. And, of course, about that, didn't quite turn out that way, did it? 79 was a disaster. 80 was so frustrating. Chasing the Astros down at the end of the season, and then the day of the one-game playoff to determine who was going to the division series. I had to have an impacted cuspid taken out. Yes, an impacted cuspid. And I was in the dentist chair. One of the last times I ever went to the dentist without fear. Then they had me, Novocained up and all things. And I had on this pair of 1970s era AM radio headset. Dentist said, "So what do you want to listen to?" Thinking I would say the local rock and roll station or whatever. I wanted to listen to the game. Of course. And it might have been the only time in my life that dental work was less painful than what I was listening to, as the Dodgers fell in that game badly and the 1980 season ended. 1981, the Dodgers were my religion in 1981. And I consumed, this is long before kids, Grandpa Dave talking here, this is long before Sports Center and ESPN and MLB at TV and all you had was box scores in the paper the day after. All you had was maybe one game a week on television on Saturday afternoon. They tried the Monday Night Baseball thing for a while. It worked, but it didn't. You could sometimes catch a game on the radio. But where I lived, in Utah, there wasn't a lot of that. But I followed the Dodgers like they were my religion, man. I consumed every box score. I even convinced my mom to get a subscription for me to the Sporting News so I could read everything there was. Followed the whole thing. 1981 was so fantastic. That was the year of Fernando Mania. Mike Scioscia was my favorite player. He was the catcher, along with Steve Yeager, who's also one of my favorite players. And it was going so well, and then the strike came, and everything just sort of died. And I remember thinking to myself, this is going to suck because I had joined the Navy on May 28th, and I was scheduled to go to basic training in October, but I tried to time it so that I knew that the World Series would be over, but now with the strike, who even knew if there was going to be a World Series? And I know they came back and started playing, but as soon as they did, we knew the schedule was going to be screwy, and I knew that I wasn't going to be there for the World Series. Why? Because I was going to be in the Navy at basic training in San Diego. And there I was in training. I went to basic training on October 13th. 2 days before, they'd had the extra series of the 1981 season. They had an extra series in the playoffs because they had two half division winners. The Astros, who were cheaters back then, by the way, too, had won the second half of the season. And so we ended up playing them in that game. We got down 2-0. I was sure it was over. We came back and we beat them 3-2. And I went to basic training as we were getting ready to face the Montreal Expos in the National League Championship Series. And I thought, this stinks. I'm not going to see any of this. I'm just not. And there I languished for 2 weeks in basic training because I was part of a drill company, which meant you had to get extra people in your company, and it took time. And so the regular companies, they were in and out and going. That we sat in R&O for 2 weeks. And one of the things they did in R&O was they sent you out to various places on the base to clean. I mean, he didn't have anything else to do. So we went and cleaned. And on Monday, I got sent out to some remote place, and I've looked for it on the maps. I've looked for it on the stuff, and I've never found it. I know the view from where I was, but I can't place it. And I ended up working for this chief. He's a Hispanic chief, and he was very much a Dodger fan. He found out I was a Dodger fan. He said, come in here. You can clean my office. So I went in his office, and he had game 5 or game whatever it was of the final game of the National League Championship Series on against the Expos. And of course, they were playing in Montreal, so it was much earlier there. And it was remarkable. He kept telling me to slow down. Don't clean so fast. You got to listen to this. And so we listened to the game on the radio. And when Rick Monday hit that home run to win the National League Championship Series against the Expos, it was, I mean, seriously, I was walking on air, and I was so ecstatic. And it was the only game I heard of the National League Championship Series. It was the only game I had any connection with at all, but I knew the Dodgers were going to the World Series, and the World Series was going to start the next night, as they had taken out the Expos. And it was just a thrill. And Rick Monday, of course, has always been one of my favorites. He's one of the favorite players in baseball. He's the guy that grabbed the flag that the protesters tried to set on fire. And even today, he's the color man on Dodgers radio, which I'd much rather listen to than Jack Buck. I can tell you that any day of the year. And the dirty little secret of this year's World Series is I wasn't able to watch it on TV. There's some reasons for that. They're technical reasons. But I did listen on the radio. So Buster, if you're listening, it wasn't like I was completely disconnected with the whole thing. So, like I said, in 1991 or 1981, I was in basic. I knew the Dodgers were in the World Series. I didn't know anything else about it. But there came a day where I had to go to the dentist again in boot camp. And I went in with no real pretensions of anything. I knew the World Series was going on, but I had no idea how it was going. And as I sat there in the chair waiting for them to Novocaine me up, I had a filling or something, I asked the dentist, so how's the World Series going? And he looked at me and he said, quote, "Those damn Dodgers won again last night. Now they're up 3-2. Unquote. And I went, yeah. And he looked at me and said, "Oh, a Dodger fan, huh?" I said, "Yes, I am. Yes, sir, I am." And he looked at me and he said, "Fine, no Novocaine for you." Now, in my head, I know he was joking. In my head, I know he wasn't serious. In my head, I know he had given me Novocaine because I could feel it numbed up. But let me tell you what, that was the most painful 15, 20 minutes of my life. And I have never, ever since recovered. I've never been able to go to the dentist since then without just being a nervous wreck. I mean, it's horrifying. I don't like going to the dentist. I just don't like going. In fact, shortly after I transferred from Trident Training Facility to USS Michigan, on the same base, they have the same dental clinic. When I checked out in 1983, when I checked out from TTF, they handed me my dental record, which was stupid because I was just going to hand it right back to him. And he said, "Oh, I can't check in today. Bring it back tomorrow." So when I came back the next day, he said, "Oh, we've already got your record back here." And my dental record sat in the back of my car for the next 4 years. And when they finally found out that I wasn't going, they were not real happy with me, but at least I didn't have to go. I didn't see a single pitch of the 1981 World Series. I've never seen a single pitch of it. I have up there on my shelf, I have the DVD. I have the MLB TV app, which has the game on it. I have never seen a pitch, not a single pitch of the 1981 World Series. But I know what happened. When I got out of basic training, I bought newspapers and I bought every book I could find, and I've consumed every detail of that game, those games, and I know them intimately well, even though I've never seen them. But the fact that the Dodgers were able to come back against Houston, against Montreal, against New York, the Yankees, in the World Series, was surprisingly for me, a motivator in basic training. Every time I would think, oh, I just can't do this. I can't, there's no way I can do this. I can't. I would hear in my head Rick Monday hitting that home run. I would see that comeback against the Astros, and I knew that the Dodgers had won the World Series. I didn't know how, didn't know what it took, but I knew that they had been down 2-0 and come back and won it. And that was the most motivating thing in my life. I mean, it really was. I mean, certainly up to that point. And the 1981 Dodgers really got me through basic training, even though I never saw a pitch of the championship series or the World Series. It was the culmination of falling in love with the game, really was. Some years later, of course, the Dodgers won it in '88, and that was enjoyable. And then the great drought, which ended last night, which I'm very excited about, don't get me wrong. But some years later in radio, I got to work for the Stockton Ports, and most of you know this. And one of the things that I was asked to do for the Ports was to interview players that were coming to sign autographs at the games. And so Jose Canseco was supposed to come to sign autographs, and so I got to interview Jose Canseco. I will tell you, I still have the tape of the interview because it's, to me, it's remarkable. But I'll never release it because it's technically unusable. I mean, we had some issues with his phone or something. I don't know. But you can barely understand anything he's saying. And it was just to me, it was a great interview, but technically it doesn't work. But I called my person after that interview and I said, he's not coming, right? And they were like, what are you talking about? I said, he ain't coming. So you might want to have a backup plan because this guy's not coming. And they got a little testy with me, but they did make a backup plan. And to my surprise, when I arrived at the game that night, the backup plan was Steve Garvey from the Dodgers and later from the Padres, one of my all-time favorite players. And it was remarkable because, of course, Steve is signing autographs, and then he comes up to the radio booth where I am with Zach, and Zach does an interview with him and gets to talk to him. But Dave, got to spend about 5-10 minutes with Steve Garvey by myself. And I got to tell Steve Garvey about 1981. And I said that to him. I've never seen any of the games. I've never seen them. Didn't hear the broadcast. And here's why. And I told him that story of going through basic training that year with all of that stuff that was going on for me. And I told him about how every time I said I can't, the Dodgers came to my mind. Steve Garvey looked at me, and as we stood there to get our picture taken in the radio booth, Banner Island Ballpark, and I finished my story, and he looked at me, and I didn't know what I don't know what I expected. I just wanted to tell him. I wanted somebody on that team to know what they had meant to me. And he looked at me and he said, "Isn't baseball great?" And I said, "Yep. Yes, it is." And I've carried that moment for a very long time. And it's just something that I love this game. I love how it makes me feel. I love how I can watch it. I love how I can enjoy it. I love it when it drives me nuts. But at the end of the day, isn't baseball just great?